Hello, my name is Dr. Michael Gott and I'm an orthopedic surgeon at Westchester Health Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Surgery. Today we're going to outline another injury that happened in the NFL that may or may not affect your fantasy team. Tony Romo, as you may or may not know, injured his left clavicle in yesterday's football game against the Philadelphia Eagles. He did have a previous injury of this clavicle which he was treated non-operatively. In 2010 he went out week 6 and missed the remainder of the season. We're going to go into some data today to see when we could predict if and when Tony Romo will be available for your fantasy team this year. If you do not know, this is the clavicle or the collarbone, which attaches to the bone of the scapula or the shoulder blade and comes across to the chest bone in the sternum. Most of the time these fractures happen in the mid-shaft. If they're displaced, then they'll need plate fixation. This is a depiction of a displaced clavicle fracture. After plated, it looks something like this, which is a long metal plate. And these plates are extremely strong. One thing that Tony Romo will have to do is heal. We're looking for bony union, where the bone heals, and that will predict when he'll be able to come back. However, in the data, we have had players come back before union. Looking at one study in particular, which was not done in professional athletes in 2013, which was in the American Journal of Sports Medicine, my alma mater at the American Sports Medicine Institute looked at 29 athletes with mid-shaft clavicle fractures. Of those, there was a very large range of when they returned to play after plating these fractures, from 13 days, which was in one collegiate football player, to 277. However, the mean return to play after plating was 83 days. Now, you have to take this with a grain of salt because some of these athletes were high school athletes out of season, and not all of them were professional athletes. However, if we take this data and also let's take a look at another study which was done in NFL players in 2010 by Drs. Morgan and others, which was the involving management of mid-shaft clavicle fractures in NFL players. Now this looked at all clavicle fractures in a 5-year period, where 50% were actually treated non-operatively and 50% were treated with plate fixation. Of all those players, which they only looked at 19, one of them was able to come back in season. It took them 10 weeks. Now that was not a quarterback. It was a skilled player, but they were not able to come back in less than 10 weeks. Now some of the reports now are saying 6 weeks, some are saying 8 weeks. Now it really is going to depend on what kind of healing he has, or if there's a risk that he wants to take with playing without it healing with plate fixation. Looking at the data and how NFL players are treated, and also what he did before, I wouldn't expect Tony Romo to be back anywhere before 10 weeks. 8 weeks would be at the very, very best. Unless they're being very, very risky and very aggressive, then maybe he can come back at 6 weeks. But I would say there's a much larger percentage chance that he's going to miss the remainder of your fantasy season and maybe be back for the playoffs. This will probably affect the rest of the Cowboys team, but that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to stay with any of your fantasy players on the Cowboys. I hope this was some help. This is Dr. Michael Gott, signing off.